What do you know about this? Why did we revolt at first place?
Because you saw Tunisia doing something and you guys were like, yo, let's go.
Okay, that could be a reason.
Really small people like getting control like 90% of the money in exchange for like 1% here.
We can hear you over here. You lower your voice a little bit and come closer.
Yeah, there's some really small people with families that control the whole economy of Egypt.
The 1% in Egypt.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyone else have anything?
Police brutality.
Police brutality? What else?
So then, let me, excuse me. So I'll be able to hear her what she's saying.
So the reason why we started our revolution in January 25th were the sham parliamentary elections that took place on October 2010 with Mubarak National Democratic Party winning over than 99% of the seats in the parliament. Another reason was Mubarak's intention to handle power over to his son Jamal Mubarak in May 2011 presidential elections. The other reason is the rising of food prices and the rates of unemployment and underemployment amongst the youth and university graduates specifically. Mass workers' strikes across the country of Egypt. The continuity of the state of emergency that was applied in the country in 1981 after the assassination of President al-Sadat. And this law actually gave the Mubarak's regime all the right to control opposition, persecute them, using police brutality and security forces brutality against the Egyptian people.
Hello?
Yeah, we hear you.
Great. So the ongoing police brutality against citizens in general and the persecution of opposition in particular was one of the main reasons why we revolted. Also, the torture and killing of the young cyber activist Khalid Mohammed Said in June 2010. He was an online activist just like the rest of us. He was a young man, and he was. Hello?
Yeah, we hear.
He was tortured and killed because of his activism, because he was trying to expose police corruption online. And the other case was the torture and killing of another guy called Said Bilal early in January 2011. The rise of state-planned sectarianism conflicts and attacks on churches and places of worship in last couple of years. But one of the main reasons was actually the hope and the inspiration the Egyptian people got from the Tunisian revolution. After Ben Ali left Tunisia in January the 14th, I remember how, that was the hot topic in the country, how Egyptians were talking about what happened in Tunisia and how they've been comparing, the situation in Tunisia and the situation in Egypt. We're going through the same. We're all of us are being oppressed. All of us have been, subjected to police brutality, lack of opportunities. And why don't we revolt like the Tunisian people? So that was one of the main reasons that we came out on the street on January 25th.
That's right.
So, what were the main demands of January 25th revolution? First of all, we demanded lifting of the state of emergency that was applied since 1981. So Egypt has been under emergency law for 30 years. The second demand was the release of all the political prisoners, and then the end of police brutality and state oppression. We also needed to define a minimum and maximum for wages to fill the gap between the poor and the rich, because 40 million Egyptians live under poverty line, and the 1% in Egypt control the majority of the business and politics at the same time. The other thing was we didn't want Mubarak, his son, their government, their businessmen and party in our country, on the top of our country anymore, because of what they have done in politics and in business. We also wanted to dissolve throughout parliaments of 2010, and we wanted to elect a technocrat government or a national council temporarily after Mubarak is
Belgium no good.
Plug it in tight.
German no good. I don't like German. I don't like Belgium.
Okay, hello?
Italy.
Some of the interesting facts that people mostly don't know about the Egyptian revolution, because right after Mubarak resigned, there was almost no coverage of what is going on in Egypt in the US
people,
media.
But I don't like them.
So, except for Mubarak resigning, none of all of these demands were met. We didn't accomplish any of this. The Egyptian revolution surprisingly didn't end in 18 days. It wasn't an 18 days. Thank you. So the Egyptian revolution didn't end in 18 days, unlike what the media has told you and told all of us. That was only the beginning. After he resigned, Mubarak appointed a council of military generals before leaving, and it's called the Supreme Council of Armed Forces. We like to call it SCAF. The head of the council is Mubarak's best friend and his Minister of Defense for over than 20 years, Field Marshal Tantawi. And the vice president of the council is his commander-in-chief and Pentagon favorite man, according to the New York Times, General Sami Hafiz Anan. So how did the Supreme Council of Armed Forces deal with the Egyptian revolution? Because from the beginning in media, it was portrayed that the army was on the side of the people, that the army didn't shoot at the people. But that wasn't true. I was detained on February the 4th by the Egyptian military, 1 week even before Mubarak resigned. And that was the military detaining me, not the police or like anyone else. So I figured out this pretty early. So when SCAF became in power, they extended the state of emergency until 2013. Or when a president is elected. We don't know when they're going to lift the state of emergency. And that was one of our first demands. SCAF detained, tortured, tried over than 3,000 civilians in military courts without lawyers or any kind of defense. SCAF has cracked down and raided peaceful protests since February until late December 2011, and it left hundreds of killed and injured people behind. However, the most interesting fact about SCAF is they receive $1.3 billion from U.S. taxpayers annually. $1.3 billion from the U.S. taxpayers as a form of foreign military aid goes to Egypt every year. And this money basically makes up all the tear gas, the live ammunition, rubber bullets, the tanks, the APCs, all the weapons that is being used against my people are made in the U.S. and by U.S. taxpayer money. I actually had a graph about the U.S. aid, but since we're not going to be able to project, I'm just going to tell you. Egypt receives $2 billion US from the U.S. every year. And it makes Egypt the second largest recipient of foreign aid from the U.S. after Israel. $1.3 billion goes to the Egyptian military as a form of foreign military aid, and around only 33% of the money is used for the development of the weapon system. The rest of the money, nobody knows where the money goes.
And then the buying the oil too at the same time, and don't nobody can pay for that. And the old Egyptian like a king that has cascade. Why it's gotta be the exhibit of African American in America? That's why he can't be in Africa making the money. King Egypt, Natambo is not American, but he was African American. He lived in Egypt, so he can make his money for the kids and tradition. Then he can be over here by somebody else. You understand?
Yeah, I understand.
Thank you.
Okay,
so
thank
I'm
you so
trying to
much.
get everything
So
that I got.
now I'm gonna talk about much more detail about the Egyptian military and the relation to the Egyptian revolution and how they dealt with it. So the Supreme Council of Armed
Just
Forces,
keep it
SCAF, is the main industrial and political
I'm trying to
power
get
in
money
Egypt
too,
right
though.
now since Mubarak resigned. The Egyptian armed forces, the military-industrial complex, represented in business generals and majority of high-rank officers.
Museum
And then you have the economic